The average person holds between 12 jobs between 18 and 54. So 12 different kinds of experiences. And with new technology, new jobs coming, I'm sure this number is even going to change more in the future. So I say this because if you're at a stage right now where you're like, Donna, I don't know what to do, it's making me stressed. That's okay. This is what this workshop's for, to help you start reflecting. But all these things we're going to talk today are going to help you know more about yourself. So down the line, 10, 15 years from now, you'll still have this knowledge to know when you want to make a career pivot or go somewhere else. I always like to tell students, careers are not really linear. They more look like a roller coaster. Sometimes you're in a high title position, maybe a new opportunity or challenge comes, and then you're switching and maybe you're in a different position. So I say this all to normalize it, because throughout your career, different things may come up, but you can always go back and reflect of how, in this next position, am I making sure that it's a good fit for me? And how we do that? Oh, it's through the career pieces, which I'll talk about in a second. But I just want to give you an example from my own career. If you would have asked me when I was 18 if I would have been a program manager, I wouldn't know what that was, and I probably would have said no, because I wasn't exposed to that. But throughout my career, I've done everything from like working in retail, been a server multiple times, been a resident assistant, have done internships, coaching. A lot of these things came from me just finding out about them, someone suggesting it. But we can see my path's really not linear. It has a lot of similarities though. Because a lot of things I do are very people focused, me being able to implement new stuff, encourage people, but they've been in a lot of different industries. So I share this with you to know, again, I did not think I was 18 and be a program manager, but I really like my position. It's cool. I get to support you all and really use my skills, strengths, and personality. And then who knows what I'm going to do in the next 10 years, what position that will be. So when we think about careers, how do you think people choose their careers? Okay, through interests? Money interests? Maybe somebody telling them? Has anyone ever told you or suggested a career you should have? Was it good advice? Okay, got some no's, some yeses. So that's really common too for a lot of people. We may be told, right, like, hey, you should go into this career. Either it's a good fit for you or it makes a lot of money, which are all could be important things to you. But when we think about careers, think about it as a puzzle piece. You want all the pieces to fit together to find a position that's a good fit for you. And the reason why I keep saying for you is because the position for me is going to look different than each of you, because we all have our own different interests, personality, and values. So what tends to happen to a lot of people is they may say like, hey, you should become a lawyer. They make a lot of money. And you're like, oh, well, yeah, I like criminal minds. I like all that. That's cool. I'll become a lawyer. But if that person goes to law school and then starts to realize, you know what, maybe law school doesn't really hit my strengths. Or maybe I'm good at it, but I really don't have an interest in it. Or maybe this is not my value. Maybe my value is really different and I don't want to spend like all my life just working. I want a work-life balance. That's the importance of doing that research before. So it ensures that you know going forward that you're not maybe wasting time, resources, money on a position that may not be a good fit for you. So with the paper that Kim passed out, this is this slide, but without the questions. So what I want you to do is I'm going to go through the different sections. As I'm going through them, when I'm asking the question, if you're like, I know that for myself, write it down so you can start to put those pieces together too. Does anybody need a pen? Kim, get you. Ever got a pen, pencil, something to write with? Cool. So the first thing we're going to talk about is your strengths. Can anybody tell me off the bat a strength that they have or a skill that they do really good? Okay, you're observant. That's great. Anybody else? Anybody know, like somebody tells you all the time, hey, you do this really well, or they go to you for advice? When you, oh, okay, very hands-on. Okay, yeah, hands-on. Like maybe you're really good at putting things together or like figuring them out. Yeah, okay. Anybody else? Okay, honesty. Like being very maybe like upfront, like directive. So that's great for the, like if you're able to name that strength, start writing it down. If you're not, that's okay. But this is especially something as you go into future internship jobs, you want to start discovering, because in the interviews, what's one of the first things they're going to ask you? What are your strengths and weaknesses? Tell me more about yourself. Why should we hire you? When we think about careers, though, ideally, of course, we want to do things at a job where we're good at them, right? That they come natural. So some questions to ask yourself. What do your friends and family say that you do really well? What tasks come natural to you? So for me with presentations, this is something that like, if I got to put a presentation in 5 minutes, I can do that. It comes very naturally to me. You ask me to put an Excel spreadsheet together, I'm taking like 2 days. That does not come naturally to me. So I can do that in some of my day-to-day tasks, but if I was in a job where 80% of my time had to be on an Excel spreadsheet, I'll be honest, that's not going to be a good fit for me because that's not where my natural strengths lie. And the third question, what small things do you do that you find extremely satisfying? So like when you're doing the task, you get lost, maybe you're like, hey, I didn't even know time went that fast. Or you're like, hey, I get really excited to do this. So if you already know some of the answers, you can start to write them down. Now the next area, personality. So this is an area we don't talk a lot about when with careers, but it can have an impact. So personality is who you are, your nature, how you like to structure your day, how you get energy. So for some people, for instance, they get energy around being with people. So where they're with people all the time, they're very energetic. Some other people may prefer to get more energy from being by themselves, taking time to self-reflect. That has a big effect on your job, right? Because if you're someone who needs more energy and time to think, if I put you in a setting where you're in a PR, like a public relations, and having to go out to a lot of events, it's not to say you don't have the strengths or the interests, but that personality may come in where it can make you really tired because it's not your natural setting. So think about, do you prefer to work with people or objects or data? So what I mean by objects or data is some people, like let's think those at the Texas wildlife. They may be working with people, but predominantly they're working every day maybe with the animals, the nature. And that's where they get that energy, that strength from. We can also think about our tech people. They're working in teams, but predominantly they may be doing the coding, working with that data set. Each person's different. So that's something that you got to self-reflect too, of like maybe you like a combination of both, or, you know, like I really enjoy working with people. I work more with the data objects. Teamwork and independent work. So based on the activity we just did, that may have quickly answered if you're like, hey, this was super cool, or you're like, no, I never want to do teamwork again. But how would you want to see your everyday? Collaborating with people or doing more things by yourself? And then how do you like to learn? Are you someone who's more hands-on, likes to get in, like try to figure it out? Or you like more learning from books? Or it could be a combination of both. So third, interest. What are those things that you naturally like to get involved with or enjoy talking about? Who are your role models? Who are those people you look up to? You're like, hey, that person's really great. I love their career. That'd be something super cool to do. And then what do you like to do for fun? Now, a little side note with interest. Sometimes with interest, we have a lot of different interest areas. I talked about this on Monday. Like, I really like true crime stories. Like, I find them fascinating. My personality, strengths, and everything else does not fit being a crime investigator. Like, that's not going to be my path in life, and that's okay. But I still enjoy like reading the true crime and doing all that. It's something that I can still do for a hobby. But I probably wouldn't do it for my full-time career. So with interest, we may have a lot of different interest areas, but with that, we want to decide it is something that connects with everything else for a future career, or is it something maybe I just want to have in my life for a hobby where I do on the weekends or the evenings? And our last section, values. Values are those things that are going to be, think about your non-negotiables that you would need in a job. So what would be important for you? This one, again, very individualistic, because for someone, maybe work-life balance is super important, but for someone else, maybe money and status is, or that ability to be able to creative, or to work and develop something on their own. Two questions you can ask yourself to sort of help see what your values are. How have I made a difficult decision in the past? So if you made a difficult decision based more on logic, maybe you're someone who really values structure. If you made a decision based on someone else, maybe you really value people. And then the last question, if you were to unexpectedly inherit $50 million, how would you spend that money? What would you do with your time if you no longer had to work for money? Would anyone like to share maybe what they would do if they would win 50 million? Oh, so what'd you say? It would be okay. So you continue to work, continue to do. So you value those relationships. Yeah. So money is like, hey, it needs to be there because we got to pay the bills. But at the end of the day, I'm always going to choose those relationships. Anybody else? Okay. Mhm. Yeah. So for you, like family, that legacy is important. So for me, for instance, if I want 50 million, I'm gonna be honest, I would take a sabbatical from Proyecto Amigo for a little bit because I like automatically like, hey, I want to go travel. I want to go travel and see places. But one of my big values is I love experiences. I love to go try new things, go to different like places. So experiences, creativity, those are big values for me in my life. But that's a question that can get you to start to think about, okay, when these situations present, what are those core things that pop up for me? Questions about these? Okay. Can you pass it over? So, so we can start to put the puzzle pieces together. We can start to write down, but there may be some sections about yourself where you're like, hey, I really don't know my interest, or maybe I'm not sure about my personality. So these are how you can start to explore those puzzle pieces, or how to explore the different pieces to make a decision. So one thing you can do is assessments. Has anyone ever taken an assessment before, like with career services or maybe in high school? Okay, so it was, has anyone taken like career services? So what assessments are they're tests to get to know different aspects about yourselves. So there's different kinds that may measure like your values, your interests. I bring up career services because they actually have one called the Strong Interest Inventory, where I believe it's 3 4 students, but you take the assessment and then it gives you a list of like your different interest areas and the jobs that connect. So it's a good way to explore one piece of that puzzle. But you can do different assessments to get a better aspect about yourself. And then the next thing you want to do is you want to research your options. So if you're noticing maybe like, hey, a lot's coming up that I'd like to be a leader, maybe I'm really liking the healthcare field, then what areas in the healthcare field can you start to look into to see which ones, what is the money like? What kind of education would I need? From there, if you're still thinking about like, hey, I have an idea, but I'm narrowing it down to 2 or 3 options. We want to narrow it down to those options. The reason why is because if you have 10 different options, it's going to get overwhelming, right? So based on your research, you want to narrow it down so then you can do the next part of trying them out. Experience is typically the key to knowing if that's something that you want to do. So that helps you make the decision. But this is a process you'll continue to do for the rest of your career. So don't feel like right now in college, you're like, hey, I haven't decided. This is what college is all about, the process of figuring this out. But again, 10, 20 years from now, you'll probably be doing this process again, but now you know about it. So these are some of the assessments I was talking about. Strong interest inventory. You can go to career services. They're located at the student center. They'll help you set up or help you know where to go to take the assessment, and then they can interpret the results with you. There's a lot of values assessments online. One that I'm going to show you in a second, but they have a mini assessment that takes 5 minutes. Career One Stop as well. 16 personalities. So this is a free assessment that's very similar to usually a paid assessment you have to can take called MBTI. It's a personality assessment. So it'll let you know things are you more of an extrovert, introvert? Do you like more structure in your day or do you like more flexibility? Do you prefer to make decisions based on others or make it based on logic? And then are you more a detailed person or a bigger picture person? And then it gives you the results. It's pretty cool and it's pretty detailed as well. And Strengths Quest. This is a paid assessment you would have to pay for as well. But this one, what it does is that it takes 35 different strengths. You answer the questions and then it gives you your top 5 strengths. I always think this one is really great to do, especially when you're about to go apply to jobs or apply to any graduate schools, because they're going to ask you those questions. So this gives you that language that you can use to say like, hey, I'm empathetic. I'm really good at managing a team. It gives you those specific things to have that you know you can have a conversation about. And these are some different research tools when you get to that phase. So I'm actually going to show you what they look like. So OneNet 3 resource, it has 2 parts. So if you're in the assessment stage of like, hey, I'm trying to see maybe like just some options for maybe what's going to be a good fit for me based on my interest. If you go to My Next Move and then discover your interest, this will ask you some questions, and then at the end, it's going to give you some jobs to consider based on your responses. So what's nice about this though is that when it gives you the jobs, it's going to take you, you'll have that option to actually click on it when it gives you the list, so you can learn everything you want to know about this position. So OneNet does a really good job of letting you know what kind of activities would you do, what kind of experience, education. If you even want to know, hey, I'm thinking about moving to California, or maybe I want to move to Chicago or somewhere else, how much does somebody who's an accountant make? You could put that in here. Skills, knowledge, abilities, interests. So that's when you do the beginning work of like knowing more about yourself, you can make that comparison to say like, okay, this has values of achievement, independence, recognition. Does that sound like me or does not sound like me? This is really important and why you want to do that foundational work. A lot of times we hear about careers and we think, hey, that sounds really cool, because they are cool careers. But then we really take a look more into them. Sometimes they're not a good fit for who we are. And that's okay. That just helps us know, like, you know, it's not a good fit, but let me keep navigating to find a career that is. Questions about OneNet? Now, the next one is Texas Reality Check. So once you've had those positions and then you want to know, okay, maybe I have a certain lifestyle I'm thinking about. Does this career maybe fit with what kind of money I would need to make? So I'm going to show you an example of this, but I need a volunteer. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go through the questions. You just let me know which ones you would choose for yourself.
All right.
So we're going to start the reality check. Where would you like to live in Texas?
Victoria.
Okay. Ooh. Victoria, okay. Let me know what kind of housing you'd like. One bedroom?
Yeah.
You want a phone?
I even want everything.
Oh, everything there? Okay. How about food?
Eat out.
Eat out and dine out? And then transportation.
Use that.
Clothing.
Basics and accessories.
Oh, you can pick two.
Oh.
Okay. Healthcare.
Basic.
Okay.
Basic and population and
Okay. So,
I've done this before, that's
oh, you done that? Okay.
yeah, I know what I want.
Just so other people know, the reason why it says 0 here and then you have to pay an amount. So some companies do pay for your insurance. So like TAMIU here, they pay for our insurance. So I would pick 0. There are some other companies though that they don't. So then you have to purchase that insurance into there. What about personal care? And then entertainment. Adventure. Pick. Okay. So, okay. And family?
No.
Okay. So don't. And then savings. 10%. Okay, so based on that and then where you want to live, you would need to make an average of 55,000 into there. So this is going to look different depending on city, where you want to be. A bigger city is going to be more expensive, right? But knowing this now, then you have a realistic view of like, is what kind of careers I'm choosing, is this going to make the lifestyle that I want? Or are there adjustments to the lifestyle that I can do to meet the career that I want? So let's say I have a teacher, right? Teachers are really important. Of course, they should be paid a lot more. But if a teacher is putting like, I want the super expensive package, I want all this, it may not connect to the salary that they would want. So then is that conversation of, is this something that you're willing to adjust your lifestyle? Or is there another career where you're doing similar things, but it's going to meet your lifestyle needs? Questions about this? Okay. So once you research, again, you might be down to 2 or 3, then you got to try them out. I always tell the students in the Proyecto Amigo, one of the things you're going to probably hear me say the most is that the most important thing I would ever advise a student is that before you leave, to get some type of experience. The reason why is because whether you need to go to graduate school, get your job, you need to have something on your resume that shows what kind of skills have you developed that you can take to that role. So depending on people's lifestyles, maybe what they have going on, not everyone I know can have an internship. But there's other things like volunteering, on-campus jobs, maybe a job itself, and maybe a part-time job. Internships that you can do to test out your different fields. With that testing, you may try it out and realize you're like, you know what? This is either really cool or like, I don't know about this. But that's okay because that's information you're getting. So again, you're not maybe spending time, money, energy going into something in the future when it wasn't a good fit in the beginning. 2 other things that I'd like to talk about is one, talking to people. With Proyecto Amigo, if you ever come and you're like, hey, Donna, like I'm in between being in business and then maybe going into education. What we can do is we can try to find you somebody to talk to in both those industries so that you can ask them questions. Hey, did you have to go get a graduate degree? What does your day-to-day look like? Maybe what are some challenges in your job? Typically, when you're around people who have a similar interest in your career, you get really excited when they're talking. Like, that's really cool. I want to learn more. So those can be really powerful, and that's something that's really easy to do, especially if you have a really tight schedule. And the last one, conferences. So anytime you have the opportunity to go to a conference, they're sometimes specific to careers. So sometimes they may have a healthcare conference, a business conference, engineering. But when you can go to those, again, you're putting yourself in the environment where you're around people who are in the same field as you. So it's a good test to see like, hey, am I liking what they're saying? Am I liking these new updates that are coming out in the industry? And you're also building those relationships with people. Okay, so I want to give you an example of what this could look like. So let's say we have a student. I'm gonna put you on, like you all are program managers in Proyecto Amigo. A student comes to you, they've done the research, they've done the assessments, and they're like, hey, this is what I found out about myself. Maybe I'm thinking about a career in technology, or maybe I'm thinking about a career in the oil field. Based on what this says, do you think those are good positions for that student, or maybe what are the recommendations do you have? Yeah, maybe they're like, hey, I'm between technology, maybe work in the oil field. Based on this, do you maybe think this is a good fit? Okay, so why no? Right, so maybe personality because they like to be around a lot of people. Maybe they won't get that energy if they're more doing work that's very individualistic. Mm, okay, so maybe not that personality fit. Maybe what are some suggestions for jobs that the student could look into based on what we know about them? Okay, so maybe technology. Okay. Mhm. Okay, so getting to be like that leader in a bigger company, getting to expand. Any other ideas? How about maybe like a manager for somewhere? Okay, like someone who would likes to lead, be around people. The interest areas are more, I would say, like artistic. But we can think about a lot of like art endeavors do need that business side as well, where they need people to manage, be the human resources, and do that. So this is an example when you start to again put those puzzle pieces together, it can give you more of those conversations with yourself, with others too. If you have friends that come up and be like, hey, like, what do I do? These are good ways to start thinking about, okay, like you're saying this, but does it connect to you, or it does connect to you? Maybe we can explore it this way. Okay. Any questions about this one? Okay.